Welcome to the Geek in Review, the podcast focused on innovative and creative ideas in the legal industry. I'm Greg Liebert, and I'm running solo this week as Marlene is sitting on a beach somewhere in Hawaii this week, so she gets a well-earned vacation. But on this episode, we have two of my favorite people on the show to talk about the upcoming American Association of Law Librarians, or AALL, annual conference, which is being held July 20th through the 23rd at the Hyatt Regency in Chicago. So we have June Liebert, who's Director of Information Services at O'Melveny Myers LLP and is the current president of AALL. And along with June, we have Cornell Winston, law librarian at the United States Attorney's Office in beautiful Southern California and president-elect of AALL. So thank you both for joining me and talking about the conference. June and Cornell, welcome to the Geek in Review.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting us.
My pleasure. So, well, June, the theme this year is Lead, Innovate, Transform. So let me just throw those three words at you and tell me, how does that theme play into this year's conference?
Well, the main goal behind it was to encourage people to actually take a proactive stance when it comes to whatever is going on in their office. And in particular, all of this generative AI stuff, it completely changed the landscape, I think, of what we do. It certainly has completely changed my job. I know it's completely changed yours, Greg. Yeah. But it's funny because we now have this opportunity to take a leadership role in an area that traditionally might be seen as more IT, and I love that. It's much more about the content, right? It's much more about the content rather than the mechanics of making something work, which is more of an IT focus. And so for me, I love this idea of, taking a leadership role. I love the word innovate because, and yes, it's a little overused, but there's this idea of innovation intermediaries, and it's this idea that a lot of places will have great ideas and they innovate, but then they don't carry it through. And so this idea, an intermediary is somebody who can kind of carry the ball forward, and I love that. And I think that's really an important part of what we do as librarians, is that we actually make it happen. So yes, we may have this great idea, and we do great ideas, but we also make sure that it actually happens, which is the difficult part of innovation, right? A lot of innovative ideas never happen because nobody carries it forward. And I think that's a great role for us. And then the last word, transform, right? So it's not just about making things, improving things in incremental small amounts. This is about completely changing how we think about things, how we approach things. And again, generative AI is a perfect example of that, is that it could potentially really transform how we do our work. And I love that. So that's the three words.
All right. Well, I love how did you phrase it? Innovation, intermediary. Okay.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the old story. I forget who told me. It's like, it's one thing to get your ducks all in a row, but it's another thing to kick the last duck in the butt to get them all into the lake. So, well, June, let's talk about the keynote. You got Cory Doctorow is the keynote. So talk to us a little bit about what drew Cory Doctorow to you, and what the folks should expect from him.
So the funny story is that I actually have been a big fan of Cory Doctorow for a long time because I am a sci-fi geek. I love science fiction. I used to read a whole lot of it. And one of my favorite books is his book called Little Brother. And his books are fantastic. He's very prolific. So I've been a big fan of his sci-fi books for some time. And he first came on my radar because one of the first things I did as a librarian was I volunteered for the SCAL newsletter committee. So the Southern California Association of Law Librarians, the newsletter committee. And one of the things I got to do as part of that was interview John Perry Barlow, who was one of the co-founders of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the EFF. And Corey is and that's really how I connected the two names, is that, I started getting interested in what the EFF was doing. And they were this was back in the 80s when the internet, the web was still a pretty new concept. And there were no regulations at all. Nobody knew what to do with it. And the EFF really stepped up and said, hey, maybe we should have some rules around this that actually protect things like privacy. So they really stepped in and did a lot of this work that is so critical to how we operate today with the internet. And Corey was involved with a lot of that. And so, that's how I first even found his book, because I was looking him up and I thought, oh, hey, this sounds like a genre that I would really like. And I did. So I've been a big fan of his for some time, and he's done some really amazing work with, he just did a whole article in the Financial Times about something called institutification. And it's really all about how, these companies start out and they mean well, these technology companies especially, they mean well, they want to save the world. And then they realize maybe they should make money. And then they really start focusing on the making money. And then it's all about the money. And then the product goes downhill. Right. And so it's really an interesting process. And so if you want to hear more about it, I would absolutely read that article. It's really good.
Yeah, I scanned that, and it talked about kind of the way the web and the web pages are degrading over time, and so it's really interesting because we see it, but sometimes we don't step back and really think about, 10 years ago this was really good, and now it's kind of really degraded. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So while I brought him in because he does talk about technology, it's interesting. His focus is really about the impact of the technologies on people. So, are we all going to have jobs? Is this a good thing? Should we be using this technology? I mean, he asks these really interesting questions. It's not about the technology itself. Right. It's all about the impact of it. And these are important questions. And I think, especially for me, I tend to focus on, that's a really cool technology. And it really forces me to think about, wow, what's the impact of this long term for all of us? What does it mean to our society? And these are really important questions to ask.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to that. So Cornell, I'm gonna give you the hard technical question. And that is, what is it that the attendees should expect this year from the conference, including I've seen a number of pre-conference activities as well. So do you mind breaking that down for us?
I'll say they should expect a wonderful conference. AALL produces, in my opinion, really the best conference for librarians. So there 60-some educational programs. There's a workshop. There's a wonderful workshop on AI that individuals can attend. Most of all, though, it's like this is a way that we could connect and recharge with one another. The good thing about being in Chicago at the Hyatt, we're all in one space. So the hotel is there, the meeting space is there, so you can engage with your colleagues. There'll be great programs. There's many of things. The annual meeting program chair, Saskia Melhart, she has and her committee have created fabulous programs that really affect law librarians in academic settings, in government settings, in private law firms. So it reaches to everybody. Guaranteed, there will be something for everyone. And at the end of the conference, as when you leave Chicago on Tuesday, you will be satisfied that you have come and you have invested your time in growing in your profession. So I'm looking forward to getting there.
Good. Well, I've got a question for both of you, and I started counting, and I ran out of fingers and toes. So I think this is my 25th conference. DC in '99 was my first, and so either 25 or 26, depending on how you count it. But for someone that this might be their first conference, what's some advice that you would give them on how to approach the conference and get the best return for their time investment there?
Well, I'll say, I think I'm the old person here on.
I'll let you take that credit.
Yes. My first meeting was 1992 in San Francisco. So this will be, I think, my 32nd, 31st, because I did miss one meeting. I did miss the 2014 meeting. But several years ago, I was asked to be a speaker at Cornell. And the one thing I'll say is Cornell is the Conference of Neuro Law Librarians. And it's for first-time attendees, people who are new to the profession. And I always said there are a couple of good pieces of advice I think I gave, and I still use even after 30-plus years. Number one is, if you're new to the profession, new to the association, attend Cornell. It's Saturday morning, and it is a wonderful investment that you can make to understand the association. But a couple of things I always say is to attend a program outside of your normal realm. So if you're like me, if I'm a government librarian, attend something that may be geared toward the academic setting. And the other thing I'll say is meet 5 new people. It's amazing if you just sit next to somebody at a program and turn and say, "Hi, my name is Cornell. I'm with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Where are you from?" It's amazing the relationships that are built. So attend a program outside your area, meet 5 new people every day. When you go through the exhibit hall, even if it's something that you could say, my organization won't use that. No, go to the exhibit, see what's out there. Because I'm amazed that things that I thought of, we'll never use that, is things that we use today. So, take every opportunity to broaden your perspective about librarianship. And that's one thing the meeting does.
Yeah. June, anything to add to Cornell's wise words?
Fantastic advice. And the one thing that is new as of, I think, last year is we now have something called the host program. So what people can do, if this is your first time to the conference, you can sign up to join the host program, and we will assign a mentor to you for the conference. And there's a really fun activity. There's like a 2-hour program on Saturday before the conference, and it's really fun. It's kind of a get to know you. They play a lot of really fun games, and I'm somebody who normally hates that kind of stuff. I cringe when I usually hear those kinds of things, but this was really fun, and it's so I highly recommend that. And but I think Cornell gave the best advice. Talk to people. It's like that's the whole point of this, because otherwise, we could all just sit in our rooms, our homes, and join virtually. We found that the virtual conference just doesn't provide the same kind of networking, which is really one of the best reasons to go. Yeah. So if you're new, you don't know anyone, introduce yourself, or someone will introduce themselves to you. That's the other thing that might happen.
Yeah. Well, I know one of the things that I thought was one of our best kept secrets, and unfortunately it was a secret for many years, but for many of the listeners of this podcast, they really look at innovation, and they're looking for innovation in legal tech conversations. And I think Bob Ambrogi a couple of years ago kind of nailed it when he said that every year AALL is really a solid innovation and legal tech rich conference as well. So people think it's I don't know what they think. The librarians going around shelving books, I guess. So, Do you mind just talking about what do you think that, the presentations that are set up and even the vendors that come to the conference, what do they bring beyond what people would think of the library, but actually bring for innovation and technology as well?
Well, there's a lot in terms of innovation, and I think it's because so much of what we do as librarians today has nothing to do with a book on a shelf. In the library I work in, we're literally in our main office, we're down to 5 bookcases. That's it. There are no more books. And it's almost kind of surprising even to me. But again, everything we do is online these days. So of course, technology plays such a big role in everything we do. So we have something like over 60 educational programs at the conference. They really run the gamut. A lot of them are about generative AI. There's one that's actually I'm kind of very interested in. It's all about the elections and the impact of generative AI on the upcoming presidential elections, for example. And then, there are also programs about non-AI stuff, like how to manage not neurodiverse staff. So, diversity is also a very big issue for us that we're interested in. So it's, I think it'll be a really exciting program. In fact, this year, because of demand from our attendees in the past, we've actually marked on our program all the programs that have to do with technology. So everything's now has a little orange tag of some sort that will show you which ones are more technology focused. And for those people who don't want that, you can avoid those. But if you do want that, those are the ones to probably look at. As Cornell mentioned, we do have 4 pre-conference workshops. We have very strong attendance already for all 4. The one I personally was driving was the Gen AI one. And what's interesting about this one is it's much more focused on strategy. It's not a how to use Gen AI. So we just had a whole bunch, we're in the middle of some webinars on how to use Gen AI, but this is really more about strategy. How do you pay for it? How do you count the ROI? These are all really important questions.
Yeah, then I know it's a big topic in the last few weeks. What are the benchmarks? How do you tell the ROI? How do you make sure that you're solving problems and not just bringing in technology for technology's sake? So it's good to have that conversation continue.
Yeah, and in fact, something because this is just my personal experience was that at our law firm, we rolled out Gen AI. A little while ago, and we've been doing surveys of all of our users, and we're finding it's about 75-80% of the people who are responding to the survey have found Gen AI to be actually very useful for time saving and also for improving the quality of their answers, which is pretty high. And yes, we do a lot of work in terms of kind of getting people to understand that yes, pretty much all generative AI hallucinates. And as long as you understand that and you accept that, then it can be, what human is 100% perfect. So I kind of look at it that way. And so I think there's a lot of potential there, which is why we have so much interest in Gen AI at our conference. Yeah. But, one thing I'd also wanted to mention, new this year, so one thing we've always done is we have always recorded, we've always done audio recordings of all the sessions that we're allowed to record. And then we make them available for free to all of our members afterwards. And I'm always surprised not everybody seems to know this, but it is available for free. We're adding something new this year, which is we are adding live closed captioning for the first time. Oh. So you can, and I personally am hard of hearing, so I have difficulty. And so for me, this is going to be fantastic. So I can actually sit in a session, you log in, and I will actually be able to see the closed captioning on my phone.
Oh, nice.
And that'll give us a transcript of all the sessions afterwards, too. So I think this will be a really valuable tool for all of us old fogies with hearing problems. So I'm personally very excited about that one, but it's brand new this year.
And I think, Cornell, you had touched on something earlier that I want to pull into this part of the conversation as well, in that, how certain, because normally we have the three pillars of librarians. We have the academics, we have the private and law firm, and the government law librarians as well. And we all kind of think the technology is kind of equal across, technology makes it all equal. And I would say, you're having to use your phone for this recording right now, because not all technology is equal. So I always think that it's really interesting to get, say, a government librarian's view of what kind of barriers they have. And then, because everyone kind of has their own sets of barriers, and it really kind of gives you a fresh perspective. Do you find that as well when you're in these sessions?
Oh, I find that so true. I always say I work for the largest law firm in the world, except we only have one client, and he's very cheap. And so
everybody's uncle.
Everybody's uncle. He's the cheapest man ever. But we have to be innovative. And one of the things I like about our meeting is that you could go see what other people are using and bring those suggestions into your office. I know in many cases I've talked to county law librarians, especially those with smaller counties. You think, oh, yes, we all have everything all together. No, some of those smaller counties, they don't have the budget for that. They don't have the resources for that. And so sometimes you have to look at workarounds. You have to see, what is something that's out there that we could tap into that we don't know about? And so, those things, when you were talking about AI and like ChatGPT, things like that, here in the federal government, I can't tap into that yet because it hasn't passed our security features here at the DOJ. And so those things that I have to use, go home and use on my personal computer. And it's like, okay, that's, but, those things that we all have to deal with, those technology issues that we all have to deal with, you see what others are dealing with. And the great thing about it, if you're a little behind, you'll probably meet somebody who was at that stage a couple of years ago, and they'll say, be sure to watch out for this, this, and that, because you want to make sure this, and that is taken care of, and that'll make your life a whole lot easier.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think really benefits about this community is it's really open to share experiences with each other, and there's just huge value in that. Well, June, let's you're going to be wrapping up your presidential year, and I'm sure that as it did me, you're very sad that it wraps up, because Ron Wheeler actually gave me not advice but kind of a warning that as soon as the gavel falls and you are no longer the president, no one wants to talk to you anymore. So that could be a good thing or bad thing. But it's definitely your year's gonna slow down. Looking back, how kind of what accomplishments or what have you enjoyed about leading the organization this year?
I think the best part has just been getting to know people, and I've done a lot of traveling and speaking on behalf of AALL, and I think that aspect of it, making the connections, has been the best part. And I'm surprised by that because I'm actually a bit of an introvert. And so I'm kind of surprised I'm even saying that. But it has been a lot of fun. And in terms of like where, when I first started, it's interesting. There are like two things. So one, because I'm the first Asian American president in 118 years for this organization, that this idea of diversity, equity, inclusion has been really important to me. And so one of the things I did was I set up a special committee called it's all about inclusion within AALL. So the idea was to try and be more inclusive of everyone, regardless of, and I'm not just focused on race. I'm talking about all kinds of inclusion. And so that has been really great. They had a coffee chat a couple months ago, which was really good. And they collected a lot of great ideas from everybody who joined. And they're going to be issuing a report on ways we can, I'm going to say Cornell can implement new ideas for next year and create new opportunities. So that's been a big part of it. I also, I brought in O'Melveny's diversity director, and she did a great program. It was called Improving Belonging Through Inclusive Language. So it was all about being aware of the language that you use, and even simple things like on your website. If you, at O'Melveny, we had on our intranet, we had some words that said, if you want to learn more, see this. And see is a very specific word. And so is it still inclusive if you're not somebody who can see? And so these are the questions that it's really raised. And so I personally have really had to rethink some of the language that I use. And so it's been very helpful. These small things matter. Yeah.
They do, don't they? They really do.
But then the second thing, of course, is, as you know, I'm really into advocacy for librarians. And so the funny thing is, when I first started, I was getting requests because people kept saying, well, generative AI is here, and are librarians going to exist? Are we going to have jobs? And
Here we go again.
Exactly. And it was so funny because I kept saying, well, of course we're going to exist. And now, because, all of us have been out, including you, right? We've all been out talking about how librarians can really help the use and utilize generative AI. That we're a partner in this process, that I think the whole conversation has completely changed. So that, much of what I'm doing now is like, well, and, if you're going to do that, librarians are really good at this. So really that's what I've been spending a lot of time doing. And I love that, that we now have a voice in this process. We're not just being shoved aside, which we were a year ago.
Yes, definitely. So, well, congrats. I know you still got a little bit of time left on there, but it sounds like you're already delegating some of those things to the next president. So, Cornell, anything on the agenda for next year that you want to talk about?
Well, I will say we want to make sure that I know the AI special committee that June created. Quite frankly, I don't think it's going to sunset at the end of the meeting. So, I always say those things, I think it's still appropriate to be going on. Some of the things I know next year that we're going to have to look at is our governance structure. AALL is 118 years old. And the way we did things in 1906, some of those governance rules that we put in, they may not be quite as appropriate for 2024 and beyond. So looking at some of those things. And I'm also looking at, what does the library of the future look like? June said her library is down to a few shelves. Mine is down to a few shelves. Those things that are electronic. How do we integrate what we used to do with how we can do it now? And even dealing with so many of our attorneys that work at home, that telework. How do we service people that, I'm from the time that you could walk the halls and you could see everybody and they'll see you and they'll say, oh, I got a question. Virtually you can't walk the hall. So how do you make sure that you stay relevant? Because sometimes I think out of sight, out of mind. And we don't want to be out of sight, because if we're out of sight, I think we will be out of mind in some of our institutions. So that's one of the things that may be looking at come next term.
All right. Well, and finally, one of the things I know a lot of people are really excited about this, because it's been a while since we've been out in the Pacific time zone. And next year's meeting is going to be in beautiful and a little unique Portland, Oregon. I love Portland. So, Cornell, you want to talk to us about some of the plans you may have for Portland?
Well, Portland is going to be a wonderful spot. I was there in April last month for a site visit just to make sure what things looked like. I was there in 2008 when our meeting was in Portland, and it was a wonderful, wonderful city. Yes, the last time we were on the west coast of the Pacific time zone was in 2013. We were in Seattle. Mm-hmm. We looked at our meeting spot, the Oregon Convention Center, which is directly across the street from the Hyatt Regency Hotel. That's the headquarters hotel. There's another hotel across the street from the convention center. So no more taking the train,
where you had to take the train from the hotel, or is that
yes? In
still
2008, we have to take the train, but there will be a hotel on the other side of the river, but the train will be free. Okay. And quite frankly, one of the things that we found out, especially as a government librarian, sometimes our hotel costs have been prohibitive to some of our members. So we have some rooms across the hotel that are much cheaper. It's a Hilton property, so it's not, it's not a property that you're gonna have to say, I'm a little scared to go there. Yeah. No, it's a Hilton property.
Awesome.
You'll be able to take the train over, and it will be free for the train if you're staying across the river. But there's just so many things in Portland. I'm just going to ask in advance for librarians, please do not spend most of your time at Powell Books or at Voodoo Donuts. We want to come back with our waist intact and not overstuff our suitcases so we don't have to pay extra for baggage that weighs a little bit too much. But I am looking forward to Portland. It's a beautiful city that time of year. The weather is normally really, really nice. It's a lot of things to do there. We're going to do a few innovative things that I'll save for a little later. But if you can make it to Chicago, which I hope you will, there's still time to make it to Chicago. Mark your calendar for Portland in 2025. It will be again a marvelous experience for everyone.
Yeah, and both of them, knock on wood here, the weather should be okay. It's got to be a lot better than having it in San Antonio or one of the hot cities. So we'll hope for that. No promises, though. Well, June Liebert and Cornell Winston, I want to thank both of you for taking the time to talk with me about the upcoming AALL annual conference in Chicago. Again, that is July 20th through the 23rd. Where can listeners go if they want to learn more? June?
The AllNet website, so AALLnet.org.
All right. Well, thank you both for being on here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Always fun, Greg.
And, of course, thanks to all the listeners for taking the time to listen to the Geek and Review podcast. If you enjoy the show, please share it with a colleague. We'd also love to hear from you, so reach out to us on social media. The best place for Marlene and I is probably on LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out to us there. And as always, the music that you hear is from Jerry David DeSica. Thanks, Jerry.
devil